Welcome to another episode of the Read Pile. Today I'm talking about Fantastic Four by Hickman, Volume 2. Just yesterday I shot the video for Volume 1. Editing seems to be going okay, except I don't think I talked enough about the art in that. And for that, I apologize. The art is gorgeous. It's got some truly top-notch artists, and there's definitely some panels that I want to highlight in this. But, for a start, we've got Fantastic Four 579 through 588, and then FF 1 through 5. And again, you've got some amazing artists with Epting and Dragotta. I know has some panels that I want to show. Man, he can make some incredible faces. Alright, so just like Volume 1, this is going to have spoilers throughout. It's a bit different than my usual videos about vaguely recommending or not recommending a book. This is going to be spoilers. I'm going deep into this, and it's going to be longer. So here we go. Let's just get started. So for the start, for the next arc, we have the Future Foundation, and I, for one, am a big fan of the Future Foundation. I know that in this video we haven't yet established what that is or what they do, but I loved it at the time. So here we go. We have a conference Reed is attending, and he says that She-Hulk does a great job, but that the rest of them are sort of stuck in the past. They are pessimists. You've grown old. This speech, I think, is phenomenal. I love it. I fully believe that Reed would be part of such a group like this, and certainly after meeting the Council of Reeds, he would find, I guess, the rest of humanity somewhat disappointing in their scope. So he makes his own plans, of course. One of those is to invite Alex Power to the building, and he says he feels like he's the dumbest guy in the room. Reed tells him that he has experience where the rest of, again, we haven't met the rest of the group, but Alex has experience that the others lack. I don't think I talked much about the Moloids last issue, but we do have some of the Moloids, including the head in the jar, this really severed head. I do remember getting a bit of that on film yesterday about the severed head, but there are a couple of Moloids that are also at the Baxter building. And then we check in on New World. This is going to be recurring, but we get New World as it progresses through time. It is moving quickly. It's rotating singularity. The planet is falling into a black hole, but time is moving quickly there. And here, almost in the background, Valeria is actually upgrading Dragon Man. Checking back in on the Wizard, last seen in Volume 1. This is also a pretty great scene of just Richards visiting a nemesis in a mental institution. It's pretty fantastic. It brings him not a working helmet, but it does bring him a helmet, and at that point he becomes more coherent. And now here Reed is starting to talk about and to the Future Foundation, which is mostly a group of kids. Dragon Man in glasses, I think, is also pretty awesome. And this is Reed trying to plan for the future and trying to set things in place. Really, I think it's not stated, but to go beyond him, because comics don't really allow characters to age, I guess, unless they're children. But I think he senses that at some point his time will come, and that the next generation needs to pick up the torch of, I guess, thinking of the big issues. So he creates the Future Foundation, which is some of just the smartest and most experienced people that he can gather together. The Moloids, we've got Bentley back there, Valeria, and Alex Power, Dragon Man. But there are some other people at the Baxter building that are left out of that group, and we will check in on some of them later. But for now, we have Franklin, and he has an invitation. This is pretty awesome. So this is the next issue. Reed is talking to the Future Foundation. Franklin shows up. He says that they had an agreement that they were going to go to a toy store, and Reed says, I don't really have time for this right now. This here, he says that Johnny volunteered because their mother is at the South Pole dealing with the new Atlanteans. So we have a day out with Johnny and Franklin at a toy store, and they run into, immediately, Arcade, which is also awesome. I did have one older Arcade issue. I don't even know which one it was. But I think Arcade is fun. He's a bit like Toyman, I guess, in that regard. But he's fun, and occasionally he is quite menacing. And mixing up villains is also fun, in my opinion. So Arcade and the Fantastic Four, I think, go well together. But in this, he's trying to say that he is no longer a villain. He's not building death traps anymore. Impossible Man is there. It's there's a line of Impossible toys they have teamed up, licensing. Okay, maybe a tiny little death trap. And the toys themselves start to attack, which, I don't know, most people would have seen coming, I guess, including Johnny, but it's pretty fun. It's really fun. I liked this. Franklin's using his powers again. We get another snippet of New World, and Banner Jr., that has been there for well, I guess 1,200 years at this point, now is going by the name Maestro. And I do like this. Here, the Thing shows up to join the Future Foundation because they are telling him that he is their first subject, and they have devised a way for the Thing to turn human again, not permanently, but they do come up with a clever thing where they said that the other members of the Fantastic Four, their powers have an on-off switch, and the Thing's does not. So they create one for him, and it's going to last about 1 week per year. So the rest of the time he will be the Rocky Thing, and for 1 week each year he will be human again. We then get an issue returning to this guy as seen in Volume 1. And then we see that he is not alone, and we find out who they are. So these are Franklin and Valeria from the future, and they are hanging out with Nathaniel. Now, before I get too into Nathaniel, I guess back in my previous video I talked a lot about how Hickman had set things up. He was building towards this master plan that he had going on, that everything was getting established really well, and I think Nathaniel is not established very well. We see some flashbacks of him with Reed as a child before he leaves as, I think, a teenager. So we get some scenes, but we're going to find out a bit more about what he's doing, not really in this suit, but what is happening with the kids and traveling through time and all this stuff, and I don't get it. This is primarily where I know Nathaniel from, and in this I think there's an assumption that we know or care more about Nathaniel than I do. So he's just in this weird suit, he has time-traveling abilities, he has teamed up with Franklin and Valeria in the future, in this pocket dimension, and they are trying to do some things, but I don't fully understand it. I don't get really the significance of Nathaniel, why he's like this, and I will come back to this point a little bit later when he does some other things, but I think this is underdeveloped as far as the writing goes. But here we get a flashback. So this is college years for Reed, for Doom, and Ben. We see all of them. Nathaniel shows up in their dorm room for a team-up, which is weird. But they agree, and I believe that this is a reference to that S.H.I.E.L.D. miniseries. It certainly looks like it, with some of the characters here. And I think this is trying to explain, but I don't think it does a good job. In essence, Nathaniels from every universe wind up in the same place, and they wind up being thrust through time, as he grabbed it, tenuous control of time itself. So I think this, in a series of text boxes, is trying to explain what happened in the S.H.I.E.L.D. miniseries, which was confusing and complicated on its own, and being summarized here is not the greatest, but this is sort of what happens next, unless I'm missing something that happened in a previous Fantastic Four volume, but I don't know, because as established, I didn't really read Fantastic Four. But he says that every Nathaniel was pulled into a single universe, and they landed 600,000 years in the future. And then the Nathaniels start killing each other. And he says that there are now only 2 left, himself and one other, and he's asking the boys for help in dealing with the final one. They go to Doom, who builds a prototype suit. Meanwhile, back in the present, Sue is alone, and Valeria shows up. She says, "We need to talk." Sue gets it pretty much right away. Well, you say mom, and there aren't too many options. So Reed, Ben, Victor, and Nathaniel show up to this blasted hellscape, and they're there to fight this guy. This is the other remaining Nathaniel. The fight doesn't initially go well, but it is mainstream superheroes, and of course, tables get turned, a hand gets severed. And when the time comes, when he is essentially defeated, Nathaniel can't kill, so Doom gets the job done. Bludgeon to the head. Afterward, they get chopped back off in their own time, and Nathaniel leaves again. Val tells her mother that the guy that showed up back in Volume 1 was actually Franklin, and that they are doing things because they aren't happy with how things turned out. Meanwhile, Nathaniel shows back into this pocket dimension that Franklin has made, and Franklin kicks him in the face, boots him out, literally. Valeria tells her mother that dark days are coming, that bad things are going to happen, and only you can hold us together. Valeria returns, and Franklin says that things aren't going well, that the pocket universe is collapsing, and they jump. While the Fantastic Four are off dealing with, in this case, the Forever City, we have Valeria breaking out of her room, I guess breaking into Reed's lab. We've got a celestial hand there, as seen previously. And she's going through his logs, Reed's logs specifically, to figure out what he has been up to. And she finds the bridge. We check in on Doom, and this, I think, is from a previous volume. I think I remembered what this was at the time, and I no longer do. I'd have to look it up. But Doom has... his faculties are failing. They will later refer to it as brain damage. And Valeria shows up. Future Franklin did tell her that all hope lies in Doom. I think it's funny that she calls him Uncle Doom. We get this silent sequence where she powers on the bridge, she goes through, she finds Reed's, she finds Doom's, and she finds the Celestials. There's a fight, more Reeds die, as seen there, but importantly, again, for some reason, speechless scene, Reeds come through. And there you can see that there are 4 that come through, and they leave quickly. So Valeria is talking to Doom to make a deal, and she says that she can return him, restore him to normal. He agrees. Meanwhile, we get the Silver Surfer elsewhere, and he is not happy with what he finds. Here we have Ben asking Johnny for some help, and they are specifically referring to the serum seen a couple of issues ago. He takes it. I guess quickly before that, Sue is leaving. Come back to that a little bit later too. So the serum worked. He is human. Johnny says, "I've got all of New York City. Let's have some fun." And they just do some normal things like walking around, no one looking, no one noticing. They go to a game, they go to hang out with some friends, and you might recognize some of those faces. They have poker night. They then get held up by the Yancey Street gang, and it has gone through some changes. These are failed.comers and Wall Street people. which I think is also amusing. But here we see where Sue was going. Utopia, which is also... I didn't remember that Utopia, X-Men, and the Utopia Island, I guess, was happening at the same time, but this was nice too. So she winds up on Utopia. There are obviously some X-Men, and she is there to meet Namor, who at that time was an X-Men, which is pretty wild. I was enjoying this era of X-Men as well. So after the fight with the Yancey Street gang, Johnny drops Ben off, unbeknownst to Ben at the time, at Alicia's house. And that's where she finds out what he has, I guess, changed into, reverted back to. This is another fun moment. So we just talked about Utopia. I talked a bit in my first video about the larger context of what else is happening within Marvel Universe at the time and how it's a bit like world history. So just because one thing is happening somewhere, it might have effects on things elsewhere too. So Reed has this telescope and he is observing the fault and the crunch, which were results of the War of Kings, and it led to the Cancerverse, and that was a great Guardians series. But it's one of those things, it's just really nice. And I kind of think he should have a space telescope, but whatever, this is nice. I mean, New York... light pollution, it's gonna be pretty bad. Reed should know better than that. So the Silver Surfer shows up, and Reed at first thinks, you know, everything's fine. And Silver Surfer says, "It is not fine. I found what you have hidden." This is how that issue ends, which is phenomenal. Here, Ben and Johnny are returning home. You see Galactus in the sky. So Johnny leaves. Reed is starting to explain things about time travel, about New World, about how that Galactus that's buried under the earth is actually from the future. And Galactus says, "Take me." And Johnny shows up during this confrontation. Reed says, "I have to go." And Reed winds up leaving with Galactus. So Sue is away, Sue is with Namor, and now Reed is leaving. Sue is actually having a council with the... well, she is from the known Atlantis, not the new Atlanteans that were underneath the earth. But they are essentially trying to have a negotiation, what is going to happen with those new Atlanteans. And just the way Sue handles Namor is phenomenal. I love her in this. She says, "I want what's best for everyone." We quickly check in on these guys, the Anti-Priest. If you remember from Volume 1, one of them snuck into the Baxter building. Well, Jenny let her in because she was hot, but one of the... I keep wanting to call him Anti-Life, but that's obviously DC. So the Anti-Priest is part of Annihilist's outreach program. That's going to come back quickly. So here we have this negotiation happening for the Sea People. Namor, in typical Namor fashion, stabs a dude. He is displeased with the negotiations and just straight up stabs somebody. One of the leaders. She realizes pretty quickly what he has been up to and drops a shield over the whole thing so that he can't do additional damage. So it then becomes a locked room situation where no one gets in or out. Meanwhile, on the Galactus ship, we've got Surfer, we've got a couple of New Earth people, and they meet up. They recap some of what's been going on. Check in on the Anti-Priest, and the Baxter building gets invaded. So we've got some of the Future Foundation kids here. Alex jumping into action. Some heads explode. Snapping back to Galactus, he asks an important question about the future, whether or not the future as it has unfolded can be prevented, and is there a way to prevent me from needing to destroy your planet to preserve my own existence? And Reed immediately snaps to a council of Reed members, and he says, "I believe the future can be avoided." So he says, "Do it." And then he starts to destroy New World. Sue and Namor have a private conversation. Negotiations continue not to go well, and she knows that she has a certain sway over him. But he tells her that not everything is as it seems, that these races are not, that there's some malicious intent behind them, and what role they have given to her. We then snap back to the Baxter building. It's rotating quickly between these storylines, but the Annihilus creatures are continuing their push into the building. They're going for the portal. That's how that particular issue ends. So here's a summary of where everyone is at. We've got Reed, we've got Johnny and Ben, and Sue and Namor. And here we learn for the first time that Leech has been hanging out with Franklin to leech his powers, and that if Leech gets knocked out, then Franklin has access to his powers. So that happens, and he takes out the first wave, or that particular wave, so that wasn't even the first. Reed confronts the other Atlanteans about what Namor has told her. They somewhat say yes, but really they're saying no, that because that guy died, his position now falls to her, and she is now in control of the new Atlanteans. Reed, meanwhile, is trying to rescue as many people off of New World as he can before Galactus destroys it. And we've got this great pinup. The brands are working on the negative zone side of the portal, trying to figure out a way to prevent, I guess, the Annihilation Wave, the newest iteration of the Annihilation Wave, from coming through. They're talking about destroying the portal. They're talking about someone needing to stay behind. Someone has to stay behind. Sue tells Namor, just straight up tells him, you're going to honor the treaty. These people are under my protection. You will honor the deal. Namor raises a fist to her, backhands him. I'm done asking nicely. And he's still hitting on it. This eye roll is magnificent. I love that. This scene is amazing. I'm going home. The kids tell Ben and Johnny the outcome, that someone needs to stay behind. Johnny elects to do that himself. And once it's done, they can't undo it. But Valeria says, we'll be back. And it's at this moment that Ben's week is up. He's turning back into the thing. Johnny tells Ben to tell Reed, and this is where I made my stand, referencing the conversation that Johnny and Reed had in the first volume after Johnny let someone into the Baxter building, and Reed tells him, you can't allow this to happen again. We have kids here, and they are important. So Johnny gets swarmed by the Annihilation Wave. You can see there the last stand of Johnny Storm. And we have a silent issue drawn by Nick Dragotta, who is just spectacular in this. I'm going to highlight a few panels here, like this. I think is just amazing. Or there. I mean, this is like Darwin Cook level, just gorgeous. I love it. Gathering, a funeral. At the same time, the coronation of Kristoff. Doom is handing off the reins of his country. This too, I love. Just, I mean, oh my god. I see Reed like this, and I just think of New Frontier, again, Darwin Cook, but, I mean, it's just incredible with these faces. See the passage of time here, Valeria talking to the Future Foundation. First thing, we've got this potential list of replacements, and she erases all of that to write this instead. And again, just look at that face. Oh. The emotion. This too is pretty amazing. I don't know, I don't remember, again, larger context of Hulk and Thor at the time, but here we've got, I think it's pretty clear who they are. I don't remember the stick at this time, but I could easily be wrong. We've got Thor there, and they're trying to help him grieve by giving him something to fight, letting him vent. Which is also pretty awesome. And it ends. Look at this read. Again, that face. But here, with that, oof, that's a hell of a list. Followed by this. Necessary. At the very end of this is when Nathaniel shows up after being booted in the face by Franklin. I'm home. There's also this short with Franklin and Spider-Man, which is awesome. Spider-Man's trying to talk with Franklin. They go for a hot dog. Typical Spider-Man fashion. He asks to borrow money from a child. They're talking about Johnny, but Spider-Man is talking about Uncle Ben. Trying to tell him that he understands. It's just a really great scene. And it's at that point that the Fantastic Four title ends and Future Foundation starts. And I remember, I think CBR used to do interview-ish PR pieces with writers, and there was one with Hickman at the time where he's talked about in a year's time there won't be a Fantastic Four book, and people lost their minds at that. But it just transitioned. Events preceding this hadn't unfolded yet, but it led to this and the Future Foundation, which is a continuation of Fantastic Four, although different. Here it says, Human Torch is dead. Fantastic Four is no more. Welcome to tomorrow. Welcome to the Future Foundation. You can see here their new suits. I do like these suits. I still want a Future Foundation Marvel Legends Spider-Man. So he's meeting Sue here. There is another version of the Future Foundation suit. Spider-Man is asking, should I be here? And she says, yes. King is still grieving. Slams the door in Spider-Man's face. But Sue says, it's what Johnny would have wanted. And I still want a version of this. I know they made one many years ago, but I would like this version of the Future Foundation suit in modern Marvel Legends. They released this one a few months ago, I want to say, but the pins are still... It's got the wrong color pins, so I didn't buy that. I want this version. AIM is breaking the wizard out of the hospital, which I think is pretty awesome. The Fantastic Four, I guess the Future Foundation, show up at the hospital, but they are too late. He is already leaving. You can see there he's got a helmet again. So the wizard has teamed up with AIM. That's going to be a problem. Here we have a dinner happening. So it's the Richards family, Spider-Man, and Reed is talking about what to do next. Nathaniel says that's a terrible idea. He's talking about terraforming the moon, which I don't understand why you would want to. I think he's trying to give the Inhumans a place other than invading Earth. And Reed says, I'm glad you're here. It's very refreshing. Reed gets pulled aside by Nathaniel and Valeria, and they tell him what she has been doing. And here we get the reveal of Doom. So Doom is joining the Future Foundation. And we have here, I guess, silhouettes and names of all of the members. People are not happy with Doom. Sue and Ben both. Sue again. She's just incredible. Ben's like, I'm leaving. I'm going for a drink. Spider-Man in typical Spider-Man fashion, like everything in the book has been extremely serious up until this point, and then you get Spider-Man thrown into the mix, and you get these extremely serious guys. Spider-Man makes a comment about sleeping on the couch, and he's like, I could go or stay, either. But here we have Spider-Man and the Future Foundation for the first time, and he pipes up with an well-pointed idea, and everyone is surprised that Spider-Man is smart. Here the plan for restoring him is laid out, and Doom doesn't get it at first, but then he does, and I think this illustrates more than anything his reduced mental capacity at this point. Meanwhile, at the bar, we've got Ben and Sue talked about how they don't really like the way things are unfolding, and maybe they don't have a place like they used to have. Spend some time figuring out our places. Got a small team showing up in Latveria. They tell their plan to Kristoff. He's into it. They use his brain to restore Doom. But there is this, I think, telling moment as well where I don't even know why Purge would be an option. But Reed's tempted to push it. And he pushes Transfer instead. Doom is reborn. And then Reed finds out what the rest of the plan was. That Doom and Valeria had made a deal. Invitations go out to some well-known villains. This scene is also amazing. The Mad Thinker and Spider-Man. What a team. What an absolute team. The Wizard and AIM. Here's Diablo. We see the invitation finally. Here is Bentley. I've earned it. But to finally defeat Reed Richards, hosted by Doom at the Baxter Building. I mean, that's a hell of an invitation, right? So there we have a table. The Watcher shows up. What have you done, Valeria? So she tells him what she's done. We get this sequence again, now with text boxes. So she goes through the bridge to the Council of Reeds, finds the Celestials. We get a bit about what the Reeds are planning. Flash back to witness some of what they've done. So they go to Old Atlantis. One goes to the moon with the Inhumans, who do not take what he says at face value. They find out exactly what they were planning. Meanwhile, this Reed has gone to the Church of the Anti-Priest. I can never remember their name. Anti-Priest, yes. To have a conversation with Annihilation. Sue has this pretty amazing conversation with Spider-Man as she's making sandwiches. And again, she's just an absolute gem. But he asks her about the gathering that is happening elsewhere in the building. And what she says to him is, the one thing that all of the men in that room have in common is my husband has defeated them over and over. Meanwhile, this meeting is not going well. Disaster. This goes back to Nathaniel. So we've got these people that are having a conversation, and Nathaniel has been involved with the Future Foundation, but I don't think he's earned his spot, at least in this. So in Hickman's run, I don't think it's been established that he's particularly smart. The rest of the people in this room, I think, have. And it's strange. I don't understand Nathaniel. He sticks out to me like a sore thumb. Reed tries to tell them that they are like him, but unlike as well, and that without a family, without friends, that they are very different from him indeed, and that things are actually much worse than any of you could ever imagine. These little scenes with Bentley are amazing. I love them. But he asks the Thing, "What are you still doing here?" And I think it's at this point when the Thing joins the Avengers. So he actually walks off at that point. And the Avengers do show up, I think, in volume 3. This spiral is how the New Atlanteans call to Sue. She says that Alex and Spider-Man are coming with her. At the same time, the, I guess, League of Villains is figuring out that the other Reeds would build a machine, and Valeria is telling them where it would happen and what it is, and they're going to do it under Old Atlantis. So things are converging. Here we've got Mole Man, and Sue sees another Reed for the first time. This is also awesome. Just these suction cup guns held up against that crew. It's these little moments I just find amazing. Sue goes to the other Reed. "You're not my Reed." And then he shoots her. Oof. Then skip ahead to the aftermath of that battle. So Alex had his wrist snapped there, and Reed casts it up. Now let's have a look at you. Look at that. Ooh, she's unhappy. What have you been hiding from me? Again, the silence. I've done something terrible. And then Attilan shows up. Black Bolt. And that is how this volume ends. Oof. There's a lot happening here. There's an incredible amount of stuff happening here. I've already started reading volume 3. I didn't want to get too far ahead before I recorded videos for these first 2 volumes, but there I've started volume 3. Here you can see the new suits. Awesome. I still love those. So I should have a video on this, ideally next week. Depends on how quickly I can get this read, but I'm just a huge fan of Hickman's run of Fantastic Four, and just how all of the pieces lead not just through Fantastic Four, but into his Avengers title, and then into Secret War with Doom and Battleworld and all of that. It's just really an incredible overall read. So highly recommended. I think Nathaniel is the one standout with it. Just he's the element that I don't think justifies his place. But we'll see what happens next. Thank you for watching. I know this is a very long video, but thank you for watching.